Hey, we got another motivational guy here. He's a guy who lets you know what your next step should be. He's a guy who lets you know what you shouldn't do. He was over 300 pounds, basically on his deathbed, and he turned his life around to tell you how you can do the same. It's never too late, man. Terrance McMahon and all his family played the baseball too, man. He got some good book recommendations on here, man. Make sure you check him out. I'm telling you, you're gonna feel motivated to do something when you listen to him. And he also lets you know how you can be a mentor as well. It's just an endless river of knowledge speaking to him. Please go check him out. I love you all.
How about a painfully secret content?
9 things that you can stop doing that'll change your life. Here's the
Welcome back to another episode of Important Miscellaneous Talks. I'm your host, Glasser Crossfield, and we are changing the world one podcast at a time. Our wonderful guest, please introduce yourself.
How you doing? Terrance McMahon from I'm calling in today from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Explain what you do for the people who don't know.
I'm a retired CEO and spent 25 years working helping people with their finances. I was a financial planner and did that from the time I got out of college in 1991, starting knocking on doors, prospecting for clients. And over the course of the next 25 years, I taught over 1,000 people how to make a living, helping people make financial decisions. And I did that pretty successfully until May of 2016, when I had a healthcare event, a medical event. And at the time I was the CEO of a company, had 600 advisors and brokers. I had 60,000 clients. We did over $1.5 billion in assets under management, and it was an 8-figure business, and my income was at 7 figures. And on top of blowing up financially, I blew up physically. I ended up being like 350 pounds. Right now I'm about 220. So I wandered into the hospital one day, not feeling too well, and the doctor told me that I was suffering from liver failure, alcohol liver failure, and so I ended up needing a liver transplant to survive. Going from CEO to terminally ill, and in an instant, I had to spend 6 months getting a transplant, and then since then I've reinvented myself. I'm a social media mentor. I help mentor the younger generation in business, and I have a incubator for new businesses where I help them grow and launch businesses, and I have an accelerator product where I help established businesses scale to 8 and 9 figures.
How tall are you?
Right now I'm a little under 6 feet tall. I was
350?
this big. 354.
So, I have to ask, I hope I'm not offending you when I ask this. How does one get to that size?
A little bit at a time. It's the same way you get to anything big, a little bit at a time. And it's called gradualism. And it's something I teach. You can get gradually better every day or gradually worse every day. And it depends on what algorithm that you run in your life. Algorithms are recipes. You hear about algorithms on TikTok and Google, but algorithms are just if then. If this happens, I do this. If that happens, I do that. So a computer algorithm is a recipe of decisions made in advance. So I was not eating well for a long time. I was drinking a lot for a long time. It became a negative feedback loop. So I gradually got really big, and then I gradually got smaller. And I gradually grew my social media up over 1 million people. And I gradually started this business. Nothing happens in an instant. I think that's a quick fix thing in the world. So gradualism is a big part of my life. It's how I teach and mentor people, that you got to have a good idea of what you want to be and be able to explain that to anybody over the phone, so that you can use words to demonstrate the images in their heads. And so vividly, it's a reality. You should be telling yourself that story each day and gradually going that direction, that becoming your North Star of all things you do. And so I didn't have a good North Star when I was running my company. I was doing the wrong things, hanging with the wrong people, making a lot of money, having a lot of fun, but I was getting big and dying each day a little bit more every day.
at that time, um, I'm sure it felt like he was on top of the world, making money, and the luxuries that come with that. Um, how did you feel internally? Were you happy at all? Were you content? Or because they say with money it doesn't bring happiness and all these things. So like, how did you feel on the inside?
Well, the most unhappy people on the earth are the people that have the most money and they have an image they're trying to hold up, because everybody's an imposter underneath the hood. And so when you're making a lot of money and you're high profile, people are always judging you. And it creates a lot of stress and anxiety. You're always worried about the business falling or something happening to your personal brand or being embarrassed. So it's a good question that happiness does not come from money, and it does not come from luxury. Happiness comes from clarity and certainty, clarity of what you want out of your life, and certainty that you're in a safe environment and you're directionally on course safely. That's and I got a lot of panic attacks. I had a lot of anxieties. I had a lot of stress in my life. I never knew where my next client was coming from, although I worked hard. Like I was broke every single day. And, it was just a bad algorithm. I ran it too long and the doctor told me it's over. So I could take it. My body couldn't. And after a while, your body keeps the ultimate score.
Mm.
Right.
How would you say that you were able to fight through the mental anguish during that point in time where you were having so many health problems?
It all came on super fast. So you're always focused on a journey in life. And, I articulate it to my students as what's your North Star? Like, where are you going? You don't know exactly what is going to happen in the world, but I want to go that way. And I don't want to go that way. Right. So if you grew up poor, you probably want your North Star probably is something of abundance. If you grew up in trauma, you probably want peace. There's certain things people want. And, so when my North Star changed from a journey of accomplishment and collecting things and accumulating wealth and status to being, in an instant changed, my whole game changed. My North Star became a journey to survival. Because when you need a transplant and you need a liver transplant, particularly, there's only one available for the 3 people that need it. So 2 die waiting. So you have to stay alive long enough and do all the things that you're supposed to do, particularly with alcoholic liver failure. Had to go to meetings, had to go to rehab, had to be sober for 6 months. All the while I'm dying every day a little bit because of the poison in my body from the liver not working. So it was just about, what kept me alive. I think after I was supposed to be long gone was just, I wanted to survive long enough to be a good example for my kids, because it was getting towards the end where you're going to die soon. And, you're not haunted by dying. I came to terms with dying. I was haunted by the fact once that my kids wake up one morning and I didn't wake up, their memory of what I was would have been easily erased, because all the good things you do would be erased by the reason you died. You didn't take care of your body, you drank yourself to death. So that's something that really bothered me, and I wanted to erase that. And the good news is you can erase anything you've done bad in life just by doing something good. You quickly forget something bad if you do something good. And, that's, getting back up off the canvas. If you ever watched an MMA fight or a boxing match, people love that. Even if the guy gets the shit beat out of him and he gets up and tries to fight and shows heart, people admire that. So they forget the bad things you do if you start making progress of the good. So that kind of kept me alive long enough to get the miracle.
Do you drink today?
No. I haven't had a drop. No, I had a change moment in the emergency room on May 26th. I never talk about it. I don't talk about drinking. I could care less about alcohol. My fiance sells bourbon. We're in bars all the time. I just don't drink. But the doctor looked at me and he said, Mr. McMahon, you could die tonight. You might survive if we put enough steroids in you. But neither way, no amount of alcohol is ever safe for you to drink again in your whole life. So when he left the room, I was quiet by myself. I said, I'll never drink again. And I drank 30 ounces of vodka every day for years. A lot.
That's like 4 cups.
Yeah, like 10 vodkas a day, 10 triples. A lot.
That's intense. And how are you able to stay so productive?
I don't know. I was a machine. Listen, nothing in moderation my whole life. Didn't drink in moderation, didn't chase women in moderation, didn't do business in moderation, didn't sell in moderation. And when I quit, I didn't even do moderation in moderation. I'm just an excessive personality. So when you're like that, there's no physical reason that you could survive. But when your programming is good, I could hide it, and I became, I grew tolerant to it.
What would you good?
No, it's just interesting because we was talking about that the other day. Especially being avid drinkers, because I know that's something that I struggle with. And I'm trying to give up eventually, God willing. I've already been told to stop already. Because I was gonna ask you, like, for it to be that bad, how much were you drinking? And you explained it, and it's just a phenomenon, like a baffled.
Well, alcohol, there's a physical. Alcohol is expensive. It's expensive on your time. It's expensive on your wallet. It's expensive on your brand. It's expensive on your body. It's expensive on your relationships. It's expensive. All right. So there's very few people that make a 7-figure income that are daily drinkers. There's very few. And that's a fluke, right? The norm is, those that are making 7 figures, they're getting up early, they're meditating, they're reading books, they're hanging out with interesting people, they're having interesting conversations. When I tell my friends who are drinking too much, I tell them that the liver needs 1 hour to process 1 ounce of alcohol. So if you drink 30 ounces of alcohol, your liver spends the whole day processing that alcohol, and it puts the fat to the side and won't process fat. So your liver's working overtime processing alcohol and other toxins. If it's always in a toxic state, the fat's going to form around the liver, and it's going to scar, and you're going to die eventually. So I tell people about drinking, like, if you will quit drinking at some point if you're a big drinker. If you're over drinking, you'll either quit because you die, you'll quit because you get sick, you'll quit because your mother will tell you to stop, or your girlfriend will tell you, but you will quit. Now, during your lifetime, there's amounts of alcohol you can have a healthy relationship with. I don't know what that is. It's different for everybody. But once you're done, you're done. I can never drink again. I got the death penalty. Like, if you overdrink when you're younger, you can't drink when you're older. You can't enjoy wine on vacation. There's some bullshit stuff that sucks about having to quit alcohol. So, I tell my friends that are big drinkers that are on the brink of getting the death penalty from their wives or somebody, I was like, cut the shit and get your shit together, because if you drink too much, you'll never be able to drink again. So that's all I do. And then I bail out of that conversation because I think it's boring to talk about booze. It's not my arena.
So you talked about your North Star, and I kind of related that to having a purpose. So what would you say your purpose is, and how can others find their purpose?
The Japanese have a saying. It's where they live the most in the world. The longest is in Okinawa, Japan. The Japanese got a lot of cool stuff cooking, and there's 2 things I've connected to. The first one is ikigai. It's called ikigai, 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 and it's the Venn diagram, which is a circle, right? The Venn diagram is where circles connect, like the Olympics do. You know how the Olympics are 5 circles because the continents?
Yeah.
So it's the intersection of what you love to do, okay, what you're good at. Like God injected a talent into every godly creature. So everybody is great at something. and we all have a desire and a need to be great, to contribute. So you love it, you're good at it. The world needs it is the third one. It's good for the world. And then the fourth one is you can make money doing it. You can trade that with the world to be compensated and recognized. So I would ask you, how do you find your purpose? What are you good at? And people are like, I don't know, I'm good at everything. Well, what do people ask your advice about? If people keep coming up to you and say, hey, help me out with this, like, you're really good at this, that's probably a good clue. Another thing is what you talk about nonstop, like on a Friday night when you're not being paid. What are you talking about? Right? What did your parents do? What did you grow up around? And then what are you really highly skilled at? Like, what are you just good at? You know, those are the first two clues. And then within those two things, you figure out, how can I make $1 doing this? And then how can I help the world, and how it can be ethical? Because if you don't have one of those things, you won't have a good purpose. So I like to teach. I happen to have a long track record of helping people, grow businesses from scratch, startups. I've done that over 1,000 times. It's good for the world. The world needs people. The world's going to need people in the world are going to need to find jobs that are going to be replaced by computer algorithms. So people need to reinvent themselves. They need to figure out what to do. And I like to teach people how to do new things. And then I make pretty good money doing it. I can make more money doing a lot of things, but I enjoy it. I like mentoring people. I like teaching them the formulas, the algorithms that I've learned throughout my life and recently, and then helping them apply them towards something they're good at and they love. And then it can help the world. So that's the purpose. That's my North Star, teaching and mentoring people and putting them in business and getting them successful. That gives me a charge.
So what's your backstory of how you came to be? Were you born in poverty, or were you born in success? And like, were you like born into this, or is something you had to work for? Like, how did you get to your purpose? How did you stumble upon it one day?
Well, you have in your life, you have people that inspire you. And my first inspiration was my father, who was an alcohol salesperson, sold beer. He was also a professional baseball player, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. Two of my other brothers, and my father was professional. My brother Eddie was a professional. He played with the Blue Jays, and my brother Sean played for the Minnesota Twins. My dad played for the Reds.
Well,
my brother Tim and I, McMahon, Ed McMahon, Sean McMahon, Terrance McMahon. Nobody was famous, but we were good enough to be, go to college for free pretty much and go play. My brother, my 2 brothers and my dad kept playing. So he taught us different, how to get a result by practicing. That's really what I learned out of sports. I'm not in sports anymore. I'm 53, but sports gives you the discipline and the track to run on to get a result. Once you leave sports, it's very, very common to see an athlete do well somewhere else. Like look at Shaq, is that Shaq over your shoulder, I think? Yeah. Like the guy's got hundreds of businesses. Like he's just good. And he never has to pick up a basketball again, because what he learned playing basketball and perfecting his craft, he's applied in his life. So, I got to where I am because I had a good instructor, and my father, he made us practice. He made us demand a lot of ourselves. And then when I left college and I went into selling insurance, I got another mentor, and he taught me how to knock on doors. He taught me how to connect. I outgrew him, and I got a third mentor that taught me how to start a business. And then I got the final mentor I had taught me how to grow a business and how to be a CEO, how to work as a business owner on the business, whether as a self-employed person, being my own employee in the business. So I've had this journey of, now I know how to run a company without being an employee of the company. So that's the magic. And so the backstory was, Prince, I gradually learned these things, and I got information, and I always look to the best person around to learn from, and I got mentored. That's why mentoring's so important to me. Mentoring's a big deal.
Definitely. Well, what would you say is the secret to living a fulfilled life?
I guess when you would look back at the end of it and trade it for no other life.
Ooh.
And that's when I was close to the end of my life. I could not look at my life and make that statement.
How does one end up living a life like that?
Man, the monks have studied this forever. On the cliffs of Ireland, the monks they sit in caves and write articles and scrolls about man's search for meaning. And the common answer to that question, this is in books all over the world if you read books, so there's a couple. The Man's Search for Meaning is a book by a guy named Viktor Frankl, who was in Auschwitz, the prison camps in Germany during the Holocaust. And he was a psychologist before he went to Auschwitz as a young man. And in Auschwitz, a lot of people were murdered, but a lot of people killed themselves first. So there was people killing themselves on a daily basis. And Viktor Frankl was talking people out of killing themselves because he said this. He said that you have a purpose to survive this and tell the story of Auschwitz to the world so it doesn't happen to other people. So once you understand that the suffering that you have is for the benefit of others, it's no longer suffering. So he calls it logotherapy, the study of the future. Like, why did I go through what I went through? You know, I've lost tens of millions of dollars and I lost almost all my money, almost all my status. And I started over from almost scratch. I had some money, but not a lot. And, you know, part of the reason it was easier for me than it wouldn't be otherwise is I believe that what I've been through, I can talk to people about, not as a, you know, Prince, stop drinking. It's like, dude, I'll mentor you. And it's like saying, like, you don't have to stop drinking. You just got to stop drinking a lot. You know, you gradually wean off that shit so that you have something way more important than the alcohol in the, you know, in your life, that the price of you doing the alcohol isn't worth it. Because you know the prices, you know that it's taxing. And, you know, if you took the same amount of time and money, you put it into your dreams will be more real. So Man's Search for Meaning is about, you know, living a life of significance, that at the end of a life, looking back on a cliff at your whole entire life, you wouldn't trade it for any other, even the bad shit. That'd be a good life.
Yeah. I definitely, I think about that, like, when I look back on my life when I'm 90, would I trade it for anyone else's? So I definitely think about that. How do you stay motivated, and on the days where you're not as motivated, how do you, you know, fight through that?
I have one last comment. I'll answer that in a second. I have one last comment on, you know, the 90, you know, looking back in your life. Jeff Bezos was a executive in New York City before he had Amazon. And he had this vision of selling rare books online and leaving this company. And he's walking around with his mentor and he's explaining to him, like, I have this idea. I'm going to call it, I don't know if he had the name at the time. He says, I'm going to sell books online. I'm going to take advantage of this thing they call the internet. And the guy's walking with Bezos and he says, that's great, Jeff. But guess what? Why don't you leave that to someone who doesn't have an awesome job on Wall Street? Because right now you have a great job. And Jeff says, I'm going to think about it. And when he left, he walked away, went away, and he formed what he now calls is the regret minimalization framework. And it's basically visiting yourself on your deathbed at 90 and asking yourself, is the decision that I make right now going to be one that I regret for the rest of my life, especially on my deathbed? So he thought to himself that he would never forgive himself if he didn't try to participate in the internet. So he had a hunch and his heart was there. So he did it. So when you're, you know, looking at living a life of purpose, if it's not burning in your belly that you really should do it, don't do it. Something else will come along. I'll speak right now to motivation. This is a world where you have to self-motivate. Nobody's coming to tap you on your shoulder and pull your feet out of bed. You know, that's all long gone. The one thing to help you stay motivated is to have a strong routine. a daily routine. It's hard to look 10 years out, write down what you're going to do for 10 years. In financial planning, we used to call it a 20-year plan, for a client to retire in 20 years. And I said, you can't make a 20-year plan because the world changes every year. So there's no such thing as a 20-year plan. All there is 20 perfect 1-year plans. So when I got out of financial advising, I used to tell it to clients, there's no 10-year plan. It's 10 perfect 1-year plans. Now there's not even a 1-year plan. It's just 12 perfect 1-month plans. But for you and Prince and the young people out there, I think it's getting to the macro of the day, the granular, like just master the actual day and have the framework for your day. I call it bends. You got the morning, AM bookend, PM bookend. That never changes every single day. Sun comes up, sun goes down, you get up, you go down. And then in the middle, you got your blocks of time, right? Learn, earn, return in the middle, do some learning, do some earning, do some returning, favors, philanthropy. And AM, when you wake up, meditate, breathe, read books, journal out your day, get quiet, do a little deep work. And then at night, shut that shit down. Land the plane on the tarmac for the night, get out, spend time with the people you care about, turn your phone off, let your brain come down. Let the, it's like a snow globe. Like I let the snow fall on the ground and rest for the night. Get some peace in your life. Wake up energized. That's it. No magic pill for motivation in my mind. Get granular on the day.
So for the people that you mentor that want to be successful, what is the most common issue that you're finding that they have?
The most common frustration, if it's an issue, it ends up being a frustration, is I want it more than they do. So they don't really want it. It's not that they're bad people. They're looking around and saying what other people want because of what they're seeing on social media or what their friends are lying to them about, because it's almost always bullshit what people say. And it's like you have a life to live true to yourself, true to what you want to do, and your walk through this planet is about trying to figure out what those 4 things are, what you're good at, what the world needs that you can do and serve, and how do you make a living while you're doing it. So that's Bronnie Ware was a hospice nurse that wrote a book to talk about regrets of people that were dying. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I knew this because I actually read the book, and it's like, what are your 5 regrets? People are going to be dead. They're in hospice and they're dying. So she wrote them all down. So the 5 regrets of the dying are, one of them was, I wish I was a better friend. One of them was, I wish I took better care of myself. One of them was, I wish I didn't work so fucking hard. Right? One of them was, I wish I was more kind to myself. I wish I was more decent to me. We're really mean to each other, to ourselves. We're not very kind to ourselves. And the last one was, I wish I lived a life that's true to myself, not the one the whole world wanted me to live. That was number 1 regret. So, life's about figuring out what that is, and you could change. It's okay to change. You can go from party animal to PhD. You can go from PhD to party animal. You can go from fat to skinny. You can go from poor to rich. You can go from sad to happy. You can go from miserable to joyous. Life's about transformation. You're going one way or the other, but you have a lot to do and a lot of control over which way it's going. You're going from bad to good or good to bad. And it has to do with your environment. It has to do with your mindset. It has to do with your social circles. It has to do with your inputs. What are you taking into your brain every day? Success leaves all the clues. People that are successful aren't pissing and moaning about everybody else. They're not spending their whole day on their phones. They're hanging out with people that are reading books and building companies and helping the world. They're in shape, you know, they're leaders. Like that's a good place to be. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're around the wrong people, it's time to leave that group. Just vacate it. You don't have to leave them forever. Just put them in the nostalgia bucket. Say, hey, listen, I'm going on a journey. I have something to do. Go see him at Christmas and Easter. But you got your thing to do. You know, you got people you're going to leave behind. It's going to happen.
As a successful person who's made a lot of other people successful, what would you say is the number one trait that all successful people have?
That's the easiest question you asked me so far. So, you know, when I first started in the insurance business, I was handed a little pamphlet. It was written in the 30s by a guy named Albert Gray, and it's called The Common Denominator of Success. And this is the answer to this question every time, no matter what. The true answer to success. Like, what is success? Successful people do the things that unsuccessful people don't do or won't do, even though the successful people don't want to do that either. They don't want to do it. So successful people do the shit unsuccessful people won't do. The dirty work, the hard stuff, the stuff that takes too long, the stuff that's too hard to get into. The entry bar is really high, so most people bounce off that and leave. Successful people lean into it. Unsuccessful people bounce off it.
Interesting. So basically, be willing to do the things that others won't.
Correct. If you're faced with a hard decision in your life about your path, and one thing's hard and the other thing's easy, and you're not sure what to do, what do?
Human nature is to pick the easy.
Yeah. So that's human nature is also to be a loser. I'm telling you, take the other one. Most people are losers. I hate to say it. It's not that losers that they're bad people. Most people are perfectly content posting up somewhere in life. And I'm not saying they're a loser like they're bad people, but if you want to be a leader, you know, if you're the person that, you know, the team's going to say, you know, give the ball, right? You know, give it to Glassford at the end of the game. You're a leader. Like, I'll take it. I might miss, but I'm going to try. And I'm confident I'm going to try my best. Give it to me. You know, like, be a leader. And then most people are perfectly content to take the path of least resistance. The leaders don't. You know, Jeff Bezos borrowed $250,000 from his parents to start that company. What if he didn't? What if he lost their money? Like, nothing's easy when you're starting out. You know, it seems easy afterwards. You know, you're hearing the story after the fact. But when you got to quit a good job to start a company that has no income, so you go from a almost 7-figure income to a 0 income. You don't have any money. You borrow money from your parents to start an idea that's not even a company yet. That's commitment. That's hard to do. Yeah. He did it. You know, and everyone's sitting around saying he's fat and lazy. Yeah, he did the hard work. You don't get paid. You don't get paid for sitting around and watching. You get paid for the hard stuff you did, but it pays every day forever. Yeah, that stuff compounds.
You talked a lot about some of the books that you've read. What is the most impactful book that you've read thus far?
I mean, I've had stages. There's three books that I pretty regularly talk about. This is the book that I teach off of the most. It's the most simple concept. It's the one thing by Gary Keller. And Gary built one of the largest real estate companies in the world using the domino effect. And he asked himself a very positive question in the morning, every morning. He knew what his North Star was. His North Star was this big domino, this change the world domino. But when he did it, when he wanted to be the North Star, right? He was this little domino. This little domino can't knock over this big domino. But what he can do is he could line up dominoes. If you see here, the little one knocks over another one. So there's a sequence so you can gradually improve, right? So if you try to go too far ahead, it's not going to work. You got to go back. So the question that he asks in the one thing is, once he knows what his North Star is that changed the world domino, is what's the one thing that I could do today that by doing that, and if I only do that, will make whatever I got to do tomorrow easier or unnecessary. So his North Star was open a lot of real estate offices. He probably asked a question, if I want to open a lot of real estate offices, what do I got to do today that by doing that will make it easier and more real for me tomorrow? So that was the first book. The second book was, as I started my journey, I read this book called How to Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, who's actually in Austin. His name's Austin, and he lives in Austin too, I believe. This is a coffee table book. You can read it in an hour. But this is a book, 10 Things Nobody Told You About Being Creative, because no one thinks that they're over creative. Like, I can't create something that's amazing. There is no such thing as a new creation. Even Edison said that he didn't invent anything. He was the greatest inventor. He said everything that I ever invented already existed in the realm of reality. I just put it together. So Austin Kleon talks about how Kobe Bryant used to imitate Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley in the playground when he was a kid, his heroes. And then he did it so much so he put his own body on it and he became Kobe. He imitated to emulate these people. Have you ever heard of the Beatles? John, Paul, Ringo, and
John, Paul,
George Harrison.
Yeah.
So the Beatles, when they were in England, they used to imitate Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis on their instruments. They did cover songs, but then they became the Beatles. They learned how to put their own spin on it. Picasso used to take artists out, and he would literally suck the energy out of their brains, talking about how do they get inspired for art, and then he'd go back and he'd take a little from all of them. He'd make a Picasso. So we're all imitating to emulate. The Jimmy Fallon copied Conan, Conan copied Leno copied Letterman copied Carson copied Jack Benny. Everybody's copied everybody. So steal like an artist gives you permission to steal like an artist. It's ethical. You don't copy, you repurpose, you connect dots. You get your ideas from many sources and you put it together for yourself. That's the other one. This last one is a book called Who Not How. This one I bet you haven't heard of. This is by a coach named Dan Sullivan. This one is the most useful book I've read in the last 5 years because it cures procrastination. Like, you might want to do something, Glassford or Prince. You might want to build something. You might want to put something together, and you haven't put it out there yet because you don't know how, and you want to learn how. I got to learn how to build a funnel. I got to learn how to do an ad. I got to learn how to post on social media. I got to learn how to take a video. I got to learn how to edit it. I got to learn how to put the freaking captions in there. Like, it's overwhelming. So guess what people do? What do?
Not start.
Because it's hard, right? Who not how is the cure. It is, you don't need to know how to do something. You need to know who knows how and hire them or partner with them. You didn't know me. You reached out to me and you asked me to help you. It just happened to be a day I was okay with it. And then I agreed to do it, so I couldn't get out of it. I didn't want to, but So who knows how? These are books. Books are great books, change your life.
What would you say is the key to living a balanced life?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't retire. I think retirement's a bad thing. I think for the most part, it doesn't work out for people. We've invented retirement. The Japanese don't have a word for retirement in Ikigai. If you're making shoes, you make them your whole life until you're dead. You live a lot longer because you love what you do. You have friends for 90, 100 years, and you like to make shoes. And you get paid for it. So it gives you a sense of contribution. So contribution is important. Being good at something is important. Teaching others and passing it on is important. Being healthy, mentally and physically and spiritually healthy. Having a relationship with your creator, whoever that is for you, is healthy. There's five, you know, there's five fruits of the tree. You got spiritual fruit, you got love, you have physical relationship, you got learning, and you got earning. So there's five fruits of the tree. So the roots of those trees are your habits that are feeding and producing that fruit. So your spiritual habits, your romantic habits, your monetary habits, your learning habits. The money you have in the bank is a lagging indicator of your financial habits. So there's leading and lagging indicators. A leading indicator of your financial habits was how much you save every week, but what you end up with is a lagging indicator. Once you're there, you have little control over it. So your habits are these leading indicators. Your results are the lagging indicators. So your knowledge is a lagging indicator of your reading habits. Your spiritual, your faith is a lagging indicator of your daily devotional habits. Like your physical body is a lagging indicator of your eating and exercise habits. These are all habits that, if you interview 200 people like me, you're going to get basically those five answers all 200 times.
Literally.
I mean, come on, how many more podcasts do you got to do before you say, wow, there's a pattern here that people, there's a lot more successful people in the world than me, but there's no one in the world that's been through what I've been through and is still in the game swinging. So in my world, I have something to give to people that want to hear me, and that makes me feel good, and I'm good with that.
You mentioned how the Japanese they don't have a word for retirement, and I think that it helps them live a more purposeful life long term, because if you do retire at 65, a lot of people don't know what's next for them. Well, if you're making shoes for your entire life, it does give you a sense of contribution, and it gives you a reason to wake up, to be active, to want to live a more successful and fulfilling life for others.
Well, I'll tell you what's next for someone after 65 when they retire. You know what's next for them? Death.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, but
they die quicker. Yeah, if you don't have purpose, you don't have a reason to get up in the morning. You abandon all your habits. Your brain starts to get loose. Your friends, you leave your friends behind because most of your friends are at work. It's just not a good. It's not a good modality. If you recreate yourself, like you reinvent yourself, like you get sick of making shoes, maybe I want to teach archery, and I study and I gather a new ability, and then I can pass that on. That's incredibly fulfilling. You just can't do nothing. I don't know if that's double negative. You just you can do something, just nothing isn't the right thing. You got to have some reason to get out of bed in the morning other than to go sit in the beach. Although some people like to be lifeguards and stuff like that. So, some people like to go to the golf course and work on their golf game and teach others and socialize and connect. I'm not the person to judge whether or not what you decide to do for a purpose is right or wrong. I'm just saying, if you go to college for 20 years and then you work somewhere for 40 years, 45 years, let's say, and then you retire, you're going to be dead in 10 years. So you trained for 20, worked for 40, you spent 60 years preparing to be alive for 10. That's not a good algorithm, right? You don't have to do that. You can make your own way. That's what I like to teach people, is to create a successful business that you own. Therefore, you own your time and you own your future. And I teach people how to do the research so they can select that career. And then I teach people how to attract clients into that career. And then I teach them how to create an offer so that people buy your product. And I teach them how to price it. And I teach them how to sell it. And I teach them that's dignity at its best, which translates later into contribution. So that's my contribution to the world. And I charge them very fairly. I don't overcharge. I could easily overcharge. I charge them enough so they pay attention.
So
right.
So people like us, who's trying to be where you're at. Definitely a billionaire one day. Where we believe that what we're doing with our podcast is our purpose to, you know, have our voices reach out to the masses, to educate people on whatever, you know, we're talking about. So how do we what's the word?
Take that next jump.
Yeah.
Monetize?
That too.
I don't. Well, I mean, you ultimately you got to keep it alive. You need to figure out how to make a living so you can do it long enough so the long tail can kick in. Podcast is a slow grind, but it slowly and gradually improves. Like when you do it, if you're consistent, I can just tell by the quality of the questions you're answering. You guys aren't bozos, or you're asking me. So, if you get a lot of interesting questions, it's going to prompt interesting dialogue, which is going to be valuable content that you can curate on this podcast and share on other platforms. And ultimately, you can generate revenue through viewers and ad sponsors, and you could potentially sell products off of the podcast. There's a million and one different ways to go. My coaching would be put a little bit of thought into that, because I just did this with another coaching client. She said, she wants to help everyone do everything so they can be anywhere, anytime. Like, that's a very difficult business model.
Yeah,
That I said, teach. I said, I help X do Y so they can Z. So our podcast helps X do Y so they can Z. Our podcast helps entrepreneurs learn from other billionaires, right? So that they can apply it in their business and be successful too. So that's just an example. Like, I don't know what your audience is. I it seems like it's entrepreneurs, but I don't know. Or entrepreneurs. Okay. So yeah, like, I help X do Y so you can Z. Like, that everybody wants to teach a transformation. I help unhappy people become happy so that they can live a longer life and be more healthy. You can just fill in the blanks, and you start really rough, and you really dial that in as your audience gets more and more educated as to the quality of your show. Is it entertainment? Is it best practices? Is it golden wisdom? Is it a variety show? There's lots of different things, and I don't know what your business model is, but my coaching would be become clear on the path from cradle to grave for a client. How do they come to see you, and where do you take them? Is it just this show? Is there other things for you to do? That's the, you're both young, so that's the power of having a stage and a pulpit to talk from.
We're both 26, and something that I come across people my age is confusion in trying to figure out what life is, what the meaning of life is, or what the meaning of, because you said, love earlier. And I think with our generation, that's something that is missing, to where it's like we're lost in a sense, to where it's like we don't know what life is, or we don't know what love is. And is that contributed to us being young and naive, or it's just something that we'll learn and get with time?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't understand. I have a son in your demographic too. Everyone has their own thing going on, right? And I do know this, that the more we deviate from the way we've evolved to live as an organism, a species. Humans were a million years we've been on this planet, and it's only been for the last 100 years that we've been domesticated. We don't need for food at all anymore. We have artificial ways to nourish ourselves, and we have superficial relationships. 200 years ago, 300 years ago, if you lived in a colony or a little tribe, you'd only have 30, 40 people in your life, and those would be the ones in your life for your whole life. So, you felt safe around them. And and you ate, you foraged food and you ate natural animals and vegetables that were still alive. Now we're eating processed food. We're getting a lot of stimulation from electronic devices. We have lots of friends and clicks and loves and likes and all that crap. So I think it's dangerous, and I think it's causing a lot of mental health. So if you see that the rise of mental health and the rise of pharmaceuticals to, take mental health, I think it's a slippery slope. We're medicating people that they don't need medication. They need to live more like their species was designed. Like an animal gets in captivity, they start being very sad. You ask any zookeeper, the animals in there are not happy. They're very miserable. They're sad animals. Animals were meant to run, and humans have been meant to be around fewer people, roaming, foraging for food, moving a lot, eating food that's natural, nuts, berries, live animal and vegetables. To now we don't move very much. We eat processed shit. We're getting a lot of technical and inputs. This is just theory, but there's, the epidemic of the world right now isn't the coronavirus. It's a depression and anxiety. That's and malnutrition and obesity. Those are the problems of the world. Coronavirus would be not a problem at all if people were more healthy. Wouldn't kill anybody. That's pretty, healthy, people that are eating their food, that they live better, that they're not as big of a threat. So that's what I worry about with the next generation is, are we going to stay, heavily connected? Are we going to be healthier? Are we going to get, I think the phones are playing games with our brains. I'm catching myself, not being unhappy for no damn good reason sometimes. And I think I've gotten injected with some bullshit thing I saw on TikTok. It's pissing me off. An hour later, I don't even know it. So think about it. When you're upset with yourself, step away from being upset and hover over yourself and say, why am I upset? I have a cabinet full of food, a refrigerator full of water, a whole community full of friends, and I have shelter over my head. So why am I upset? Because somebody didn't like my video or made a nasty comment or called me out for being wrong? That's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But I've done it myself.
You all have, for sure. My final question: if you got dinner with 5 people, dead or alive, who would it be?
Dead or alive? I'd like to have dinner with Donald Trump for a lot of reasons. The guy's been through a lot. He's been in the limelight and in the target. And I'd love to talk to Charlie Munger. I'd love to talk to Jesus.
That's a good one.
Winston Churchill. I mean, you're catching me cold here. Wouldn't be a movie star, I'll tell you that much. I could care less about it. That's all fake. They're completely fake. They're manufactured out of a story. Everything's a story. I want real things. And I don't idolize anybody. I just want to learn, like, what did you do when this happened? What did you do when that happened? Churchill had the world on his shoulders for one decision. The whole world was on his shoulders at the war. Like if he surrenders to Germany, who knows? Like that was a massive decision. That would have been cool. I mean, if I had more time to think about it, I'd probably come up with a different list other than Jesus and Churchill. Those are two pretty. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Trump would make the list. Trump's an interesting guy. I met him a couple times over the years. Nothing. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. But I was in rooms and he was in the rooms, and he's a polarizing figure, and that's interesting to me. How is it to be that much loved and that much hated at the same time? How's life like? How is life like living like that? I mean, with the threats he probably, I mean, I can't even imagine the threats he possibly lives with each day. So, I mean, it's interesting to me, and life's about having interesting conversations. It's about having interesting ideas and thoughts.
I agree.
I mean, the Dalai Lama, the Buddha, There's so many, man. That'd be a tough one. I'd need an hour to think about that. That's not even a fair question.
Well,
I got a question. Well, two. Well, you said I saw on your Instagram you said that I think you was given the opportunity for people to be an advisor. How does that work?
Anywhere
Like,
advisor?
yeah.
Well, it's a book I wrote. I was a financial advisor, and when I trained people how to become a financial advisor, it was basically you'd make a list of everybody in your neighborhood, from church to the kids you went to high school with, the kids you went to college with, the people your mother knew, your brother knew, everybody around the neighborhood, and you'd call them up and you'd help them if they wanted you to. It was a very geographically restricted world where I was chained to my desk and tied to my state for 25 freaking years. And since then, I've learned how to use algorithms, computer formulas, and ads and social media where I could have made 10 times the money, having 25 times the freedom, being in any country on earth. So it's about location independence. It's like, we're in these prisons that we build around our own brain. Like, the world's a big world. You can be an anywhere advisor. You can do what you guys are doing from anywhere on the planet. You're not even in the same room right now. So you can build a business that attracts clients that you can serve without meeting them. That's the concept of the anywhere advisor. And it doesn't have to be financial advice. It could be any advice. You guys are in the advice business. You're in the podcast. You're in the information business. So that's the business you're in. You can do it from anywhere. And you just got to think, what's the next dot to connect to your current momentum? What are viewers asking for? What could serve them? What could you do beyond this as this grows, until it grows, to help fund the transformation?
And then lastly, are you genuinely happy?
Yeah, I am. I have a lot of happiness. Life's about health, wealth, love, and happiness. So this is from Ty Lopez. So the 4 pillars of a good life, he calls it, is wealth, health, love, and happiness. So I'm financially independent. You know what that means? That means my fixed incomes are lower than my fixed expenses are lower than my fixed income. So I could live the way I'm living right now for the rest of my life without ever working another day. So work for me is optional. So that's wealth. That's pretty wealthy. I made more money and had more money, but that's wealth when you can do whatever you want each day without having to go to work. The second thing is health. I'm a pretty healthy person other than my transplant. Like, I live a healthy life. And then I have a lot of love in my life. I have a new fiance. I have a great relationship with my kids and my family. I stay in touch. And then I'm pretty, that if you have the first 3, the last thing about being happy is, again, getting to Ikigai, I'm living my dream. I'm living my purpose. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. And I don't apologize for it because I worked my ass off to be happy.
As you should.
Don't apologize for that.
Thank you so much for taking the time out, man. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Stay in touch, guys.